Hi everyone. To all of you tuning in by Facebook Live to our Pioneer community page, as well as the various pages that are sharing this Pioneer community page. Great to see all of you here live on this Sunday morning. Yeah, we are powering you live from Frontier Community Club. And today, just like all our Connect at Pioneer series, we're gonna talk a bit about, solar, more about solar. But in case many of you are not aware, this morning we just had our community volunteers and myself down the ground for today's SG Clean and Green Day, where we are doing lots of green activities, from litter picking and letting the cleaners take a break as well, and of course many other initiatives on the 3Rs. And if you have been tuning to the other pages across the web, everyone today really embarking on this entire green movement. You have heard about the green plan as well. And today, actually, we have two special guests. The very first special guest we have is Jen. Jen is a Senior Vice President with Sembcorp, and she will be the content expert for this morning's sharing on solar energy, this very, very important, sustainable and alternative source of energy for all of us. You've heard a lot about it. We're going very, very big on it. And in case you're not aware, in particularly in Pioneer constituency, it's about 95% adoption rate on all our HDB flats here in Pioneer SMC. And in case why you're wondering why the remaining 5%, it's more engineering structural challenges. But otherwise, we're really rolling out, not just in Pioneer SMC, but the whole town in West Coast as well. West Coast Town Council, myself being the chairperson, we are embracing and really going full steam ahead in rolling out in tandem with some of the upgrading, the HIPs, the NRPs, and what have you, all the various projects. We're trying to streamline it, and in phases. I know more than 70% of the West Coast town is already on solar, as in all the HD blocks, but we are going to do it as as pervasive as possible within structural as well as engineering constraints. So that's a quick update on this entire solar embracing by West Coast town. And in fact, later on, I'm gonna get Jen to share with you a bit more about the solar ecosystem. And as you can see, I've gotten our Singapore's green plan flash out to all of you. You've heard this many times, and I'm really glad that we are rolling out a whole series of initiatives, not just today, but for the many, many years to come. I think there are a lot of plans that have been rolled out. This was announced just slightly more than a month ago during the Committee of Supply, and there's a lot of emphasis. It's a multi-ministerial initiative, and what better way to segue into my next segment, where I'm going to invite a very, very special guest. Yeah, it's none other than Minister Iswaran. Yeah, also part of our West Coast team. And he has been in the thick of action during his stint with the Ministry of Trade Industry on energy, alternative energy. And really, I just wanted to hand the mic over to him to share his thoughts and to also join me to open today's session. Minister Iswaran, please.
Thanks a lot, Patrick. And it's a real pleasure to join you as well as Jen in this dialogue. And very glad that all of you can spare your time on a Sunday morning to discuss this very important topic. I'll keep my remarks fairly sharp on a few key points, because I think then we can hear from Jen and then have a broader discussion. First, I want to share with you my perspective on this and what's my background coming into this. Well, as Patrick has said, one important aspect of it has been the work that I've done in MTI in the energy space. I was handling the energy policy until a few years ago. And it's really been about how we can diversify our sources of energy, specifically electricity in Singapore, and how we can do this in a manner that is sustainable from an environment point of view and resilient from a national needs point of view. And I've also been involved in a variety of discussions and initiatives about alternative energy programs at the World Economic Forum and also in Singapore. The Solar Energy Research Institute, for example, was started up several years back whilst I was in MPI and so on. So Basically, today we're talking about solar, but I thought it's useful to put solar within the broader context. When we are talking about sustainable energy and the path forward for Singapore, first, there's an international dimension, because I was also involved in the Interministerial Committee on Climate Change in Singapore, because as Patrick has shared, Green Plan is not just about electricity, it's about transportation, it's about what we do in our living, urban areas, etc., etc. And the three R's are an important part of it. But essentially, first, there's an international dimension because it is a global challenge, carbon emissions and sustainability, and the impact through climate change. That's why Singapore in the Paris Accord made a very clear commitment about the emissions, carbon emissions that we will seek to stay within by 2030. And in fact, we have said that we will peak by 2030. So I think this is important because it means we have a national goal, which is actually part of an international commitment that we have given. And as you have seen recently, the US has stepped up now after the change in administration to do more in this regard. Now, within that then comes, okay, we have made this international commitment. What does it mean for us at the national level? So there's a few angles to this. First is, of course, the basic stuff, energy efficiency. How do we use energy in a more efficient manner so that we can reduce our carbon footprint, even if we don't change anything else? The second is also putting a price on carbon. So, we have introduced the carbon tax, $5 a ton. And I think this is important because it signals to everyone that there's a price to emission. And for example, the petrochemical companies, the electricity generating companies, they must take this into account when they make their decisions on how much to produce, how to produce, etc. So the carbon tax has been an important part. And I would point out that we are amongst the first countries in the world to impose something in the form of the tax that we have done. It's an important step, and it's a signal of our intent and commitment. Then, of course, we have undertaken significant effort in the whole space of both the usage and the alternative energy sources. Usage, so for example, electrification of our transport system will help us become more sustainable. If the electricity is generated in a sustainable way and you minimize the wastage through transmission and so on, you still, for example, electric vehicles is a very good pathway, but we still need to pay attention to how batteries are disposed, because that's going to be a key environmental impact issue. And then it's the sources of energy. So yes, we've got our traditional sources. So Singapore has pivoted to the cleanest form of carbon-based or fossil fuel, which is natural gas, from as early as the early 2000s. So over 95% of our energy is generated by natural gas-based combined cycle gas turbines. So this is important because it means even with the carbon-based fuel sources, we're trying to minimize the carbon footprint. And this is why we've also got the LNG terminal, which we built maybe about 8-9 years ago and so on. It's part of our effort there. But the other important element in this is what are the alternative options for us? So Singapore is an alternative energy disadvantaged country in the sense that we can't put out wind turbines, and there are not many places to do that. But one of the most promising sources is solar, which you've already heard about, and we're going to hear more about from Jen. So solar, when I was covering this, we said we would go for 1 gigawatt peak by 2025. But the technology has improved. We've had significant progress made. And so, in fact, the Ministry of Trade and Industry has now said by 2030, we're going to go for 2 gigawatt peak. And by the middle of this decade to get to about 1.5. But I think Jen or someone can give more detail, more specific on that. So the key point is this. I mean, even with all of this, by the way, solar can only contribute maybe 5 to 10% of our electricity needs. but it's an important step. Whether it's our HDB rooftops, covering some of our reservoir waters with the solar panels, we are exploring all kinds of options. And then we are also investing some level of effort in other kinds of energy sources. But solar, when we started this work, solar was significantly more expensive. And the industry used to say, you must subsidize me. And there used to be all these sort of subsidies. But the technology has improved. The solar panels are now very competitive. And solar can be supplied to our system very competitively compared to, say, gas-fired turbines and so on. So we are, in a sense, a golden age of solar. Now it's about how we do this in a manner that is sustainable and able to get everyone on board. So I'll pause there, but just to re-emphasize that there's an international dimension, there's a national dimension, and in that national dimension, we have to look at the regulations around tax, around usage, and we have to explore alternative sources. And the most important alternative source that we are pursuing right now is solar. So let me stop there and hand it back to Pat and Jen. Thanks.
Thanks, Minister Iswaran, for giving us a bit of the genesis, the background, and of course, a better understanding on how this entire solar renewable energy agenda is taken at an international, global, as well as national level. But early on, as I shared, I'm glad at the community level, we are hard at work at this, and we are partnering many of our residents, our community leaders, and various groups within West Coast and of course Pioneer constituency. And a good starting point is the West Coast Town Council embarking on this solarization, or should I say solar panels. I was just visiting one of the panels. I climbed up all the way to the rooftop. Kill two birds with one stone, also look up on the rooftop. At the same time, also look at some of the panels that have been rolled out and implemented since last year. And I'm glad to share that they are in good shape and doing its work in trapping a lot of this very, very useful solar energy. But I thought good now, a nice segue for me to hand the time over to Jen, the resident expert, so to speak, to share more about solar energy, the entire ecosystem. And there are various elements of solar. It's not just the panels alone and energy per se. We'll hand this time to her to let her do some sharing. Up to you, Jen. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Advisor, for having me on this show to share my vision on solar energy. A bit about myself. I'm from Sembcorp, and I've been in the solar industry since 2009. Like what Minister said, back in 2009, it is not economical. It was really difficult to encourage people to do solar. So I'm really excited to be part of this journey where solar is really getting more and more economical and more people are adopting. But today, more importantly, I think what I'm sharing is the insight to how a company in Singapore makes sustainability our business. A little bit of introduction on Sembcorp first before I go into the details about solar. As a company, we have made sustainability our business. What does that mean? Of 12,700 megawatts of power that we have, almost a third is renewable energy capacity. We also have water and wastewater treatment capacity of 8 million cubic meters a day. So we actually pride ourselves to be a leading Asian developer with a strong track record into sustainable developments and delivering economic engine for growth. Today, I'm not just talking about doing solar, how solar can contribute, but it's about how do we build the entire ecosystem within solar and within our business. So we are a leading provider for sustainable energy solutions, and we are proud to be a partner of Singapore Green Plan 2030. So we are committed to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, number 7, number 11, and number 13. It's all about how do we have cleaner energy, how do we make sustainable cities, and what is our actions for climate actions. On the right side, you can see the future depends on electricity, but do we need to make electricity greener? All the waste that we collected have to be sorted, have to be recycled, and how do we, make the world a greener place? Just some key highlights. When we talk about sustainability, is it just constructing solar? Is it just making things greener? Is it just recycling? Actually, that's not only it. We also contribute to the community. We converted 870,000 tons of waste into energy. We generate revenue for the company, for the country. We actually also do recycling for our coal-fired power plants in India. I think more importantly, we also create jobs, we plant trees, and we avoid carbon dioxide emission. So these are just some of the things as a company that we have contributed in 2020. Just saying that we are going to do it is not enough. Actually, we get recognized by awards and accolades. So some example of the awards that we have gotten is the Sustainability Award, and also we are the Solar Power Company of the Year. And we will continue to work hard to contribute in this area. Moving into solar energy, which is a key topic of today, I'm happy to say that we have currently about more than 360 megawatts of solar power, and that is about 2,500 buildings, HDB blocks, commercial buildings, schools. So it's almost 2,500 sites, and I think we are looking to build more together with the government initiative to hit 1.5 gigawatt by 2025. So it's not only on HDB, but it's on almost all the buildings that is solar ready, we can build. But Singapore is such a small area, we can't only do it on buildings, we have also to move towards floating and ground mounted installations. So we do have sustainability partners like Google, Facebook, UBS, CapitaLand. Some of these have buildings, but some of these don't. So solar is possible for everyone, not only people with rooftops. As you can see on this map, this is where only Sembcorp, our footprint. I believe there are other players in Singapore. So, in time to come, you'll see this map being filled with solar panels. It's exciting because that means that we have more and more green energy for Singapore. A few days ago, I think some of you have seen on our PM's YouTube page or on his LinkedIn, he has mentioned in the Leaders Summit, he has mentioned that Singapore has one of the largest floating solar. For those of you who don't know what is it, you can see this picture. Floating solar is actually one of the largest solar project in Singapore. It's a 60 megawatt peak solar system that is built on Tengeh Reservoir. Not only we have the solar, we actually look at the environmental impact. It can reduce 33,000 tons of carbon emission, and it actually equates to about removing 7,000 cars from the road. We have also created a lot of jobs from this installation that we have. So this plant is expected to be ready in the next 2 to 3 months. So moving on to what's closest to Pioneer and West Coast GRC is our Solar Nova program. Sembcorp has actively participated in the initiative from HDB and EDB, which is called Solar Nova program. And we have actually participated in Solar Nova 2, Solar Nova 3, and Solar Nova 5. These are all initiatives to install solar on top of HDB roofs, as well as schools and some government buildings. The energy produced actually powers up common services like lifts, water pumps, and the excess power is then exported to the grid. This program actually aims to power about 135,000 four-room HDB blocks with clean energy by 2030. And this actually is one of the initiatives to support Singapore's target to install 2 gigawatt peak of solar capacity into the public buildings. Well, just on HDB is actually insufficient. We also look towards commercial and industrial buildings. We have some of the example of customers that we have, Halliburton, Cash, Stanford Tires. These are names that is close to our hearts. And we actually also reduce the grid energy consumption, help them to be green, and these companies then achieve their sustainability goals and reduce carbon emissions. Well, having installed 2,500 solar energy on 2,500 panels, do we know, are they actually emitting or really generating the energy that we plan to have? Yes, we do. We actually have a control center where we monitor all these solar generation, how much is emitted, what are the issues that each plant is facing. We do our asset management through this. And in this system, we hire a lot of digital engineers, data analytics, operations maintenance engineers to help us maintain and sustain our business. So to the sustainable initiative, it's not just about building the energy, but it's also about job creation, job conversion, and building a community. Okay, after talking so much about solar, what is actually solar? Solar is actually solar panels that is installed. We use an inverter to convert the energy. It goes to an electrical panel. Then energy is either consumed by the consumer or exported, or extra energy is exported to the grid. In time to come, battery may become economical. We may store the energy for night consumption. So one thing to note is the sun is free. It is abundant. You don't have to buy sun. So for as much solar energy that you can install, you can get as much free sun as possible. So solar energy is indeed more economical over the last 2 to 3 years. Like I said, when I joined in 2009, I really have to look for climate enthusiasts to install solar at more expensive electricity rate. Today, solar is definitely cheaper than the power that you can get from the grid. The only issue that we have from solar is because the sun only operates in the day, you don't get solar at night. That is the only challenge, but hopefully with technology, with improvement, we can work battery to be as economical as possible. Like what Minister say, disposal of batteries and how to deal with it at the end of life is also something that we need to work on. If we can really find the transformation on this, I think solar is really the way to go. Okay, does it mean that you can only do solar if you have a roof? The answer is not. We can actually either build solar if we have our own roof. If not, we can always procure solar from the market, and you can buy, do a financing on that. You can procure green energy certificates. There's many ways to contribute to the solar ecosystem in Singapore. You can also work for a solar company. So I welcome resumes. And then you can work for other solar companies. You can study solar. You can, participate as a student. There is many ways to get involved in solar. And of course, when you talk about economics, you can procure solar. You can buy solar. There's many ways to contribute to the solar community in Singapore. And this slide is about, choosing our sunshine plan. Not that I'm trying to do business here, but like I said, there's many ways to procure solar. And you can write to me on jobs, on solar energy, on, even if you want to learn about solar, I'm happy to answer that. Yeah, we will help you to go green. Thank you.
Hi, Vic. Hi, everyone. And for all of you who are tuning in, do like and share our Pioneer community page, or if you are tuning in from my community page or Minister Iswaran's community page, do help us like and share so that the more will benefit from this very useful, very informative session. So a big thank you to Jen for that, for the deck of slides and sharing with us some of the different perspective of solar energy. Something that we are going very big into, putting a lot of resources, time, and energy as part of the entire green plan. And during this last segment, where we call the Q&A segment, we'll take questions from all of you, and we'll invite Minister Iswaran back. And also we have another special guest. We have Chester. Chester, one of our community youth leaders, who heads up our youth network here in Pioneer constituency, and in particular Frontier Community Club. So we have Chester here, who will hopefully throw us some questions, particularly to the resident expert and as well as with Minister aboard. We will be able to take some of your questions. So feel free to put your questions on our various comments page, comments columns, and drop down on our Facebook pages. At the same time, I think we're getting some questions coming in. In fact, just a while ago, I was listening to Jen's presentation. There were some questions coming in, and I thought I just start the ball rolling. I think first thing is the solar panels that we have on the top of our HDB flats. I think there were questions that, what's the lifespan of these panels?
Okay, the lifespan of a solar panel can last about 25 to 30 years. Actually, the contractors that we procure these panels from actually go through destructive testing,
Wow.
severe testing, and they actually get certified by companies like Tufsuit, UL, or VDE, that they have this kind of lifespan for the next 25 to 30 years. In fact, we get warranties for this, and so far there is very, very minimal or claims on this, because it's made of tempered glass, aluminium, silver, and very, very hardy material. So they do last for a long time.
I see. Yeah. Okay. Well, Chester?
Sure.
I know you have some questions on your phone.
Sure. Thanks everyone. I'm really excited to be here. Like sustainability, solar energy, it's really a great topic in the minds of most youth actually. So first question, actually this is where are these panels installed in Pioneer? Yeah. Just a quick, yeah.
Yeah, besides the rooftops, yeah, maybe for the benefit of Chester who's just joined us, earlier on we shared with you also at the rooftops, and we are starting to look at different parts of the estate. For example, some of the street lamps that we're seeing, or the park lamps. So I think the various agencies, in fact, you'd be surprised, even some of bus stops and various locations within, for example, the shopping malls in our area. Yeah, we're all going quite big into this, and where possible from an engineering perspective. But maybe Jen, what's your sense? I know you have been involved very in the trenches with all the various rollout of the various solar projects across Singapore, particularly in West Coast Town. Any other possibilities, or you've seen very nice possibilities?
I think schools, buildings, any buildings with nice unshaded roof will be a candidate for solar installation. But particularly in Pioneer and West Coast, other than HDB blocks, we're talking about schools or commercial buildings that have got good how to say,
Sunlight.
Yeah, because we depend on the sun, and the sun is free, right? So we need good sunlight. Moving forward, as part of JTC's initiatives, they are also looking for plots of land that is unused for the moment. We can install solar. After that, if somebody needs to use the land, we'll move the solar away. So in fact, we have participated with JTC on this initiative. There's a plot of land that we have in Tuas. We actually construct solar. Yeah, Tuas is nearby. So it's all in the west, right? So in Tuas, the plan will be completed in June or July. And this plan is actually, we call it movable. So any moment that JTC needs to build a building, we'll move it to another site. So hopefully we see more of this in Singapore, where we don't need to install it in a fixed position for the ground. Because land is very scarce in Singapore, but we optimize whatever we can for the moment.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing. I guess the next question is more business related. So it's actually what is the business model for solar energy, as well as how actually does it benefit the PMET community?
Okay, business model for solar, you can actually procure the solar. I mean, landed home residents can just buy the system, and then after that, they get it connected to the grid, and in the day they consume solar, in the night they draw from the grid, so they become green themselves. Businesses can also procure solar where they pay upfront payment, and then it's just like buying an aircon, right? You switch on the aircon and you enjoy it. But solar is very high in capex, so some people prefer not to procure. You work with companies like Sembcorp and some other leasing companies, where Sembcorp takes the upfront capacity, but you just pay for the kilowatt hour that's generated. It's a little bit like the car sharing scheme, where you just pay per use. So these are the two main business models that we have in Singapore. The last one is, like I mentioned just now, people do not have the real estate for solar. They can actually procure green carbon credits, renewable energy credits, or there's this term called IREX in the market where you also play your part to procure green energy from players like us who sells them.
Yeah. So the
And
minister,
I just wanted to add, because you asked the question, I think was about PMET opportunities as well. I think it's important to highlight this because this is a very exciting new area. And as Jen has described, there's one set of things around the actual business of solar in the Singapore context, whether it's not just installing and so on, but how do you make it work as a business, right? In terms of whether you sell it as a installation or do you sell it as a service and so on. But there are at least two other areas, and this in itself is already creating interesting new possibilities for our PMETs and Singaporeans who are interested in this space. But two other areas. One is the upstream in the research. There's still a lot of work going on in the whole area of solar energy, and it is about how you can improve the thermal efficiency of solar panels, for example, and things like that, because it's basically converting solar into electrical. That's one part. The other part is how do you convert that into storage? Because you may not use everything when it is being generated, but you need a way to store it and use it later. And then the third part, of course, is then if you're using batteries to store, what do you do with the batteries afterwards when you recycle and disposal and so on. So this is a very important area of work. And there's a lot of, it's not just research, it's actually research with very clear commercial application. And then the other side, I wanted to just say is, what we're doing in Singapore actually can be scaled in the region very, very much. Because a lot of our solutions also work in the region. And in fact, in the region, you can even do much bigger projects. So for example, you could set up a few 100-megawatt solar plant in a location, and and then it feeds into an industrial estate or whatever in one of our neighboring countries. And then you combine that with the grid to create a stable source of power and so on. And this means what? You need technical knowledge, but you also need the people who know how to finance solar projects and the lawyers who know how to structure the deals. Because these, they try project financing, but there are other ways of doing this, but you must understand the industry as well. So my point is, it is a sector which has got a lot of possibilities in terms of career as well. And I think for especially younger generation of Singaporeans, but really even for those who are already in the workforce, this is actually an area rich with opportunities.
Yeah.
Actually, the minister, you sparked off a very, very important topic because I know many of you tuning in, particularly living in this western part of Singapore and Pioneer constituency as well. Many of you, as Minister mentioned, are professionals, managers, executives, and technicians, and many of you I know are still, in many of our institutes of higher learning, and thinking of going to some of these green jobs. Yeah, so it's an exciting space. I mean, we heard a lot about it earlier through Jen, and of course at the Committee of Supply this year, sharing about the opportunities here. And myself being from the labor movement, you can rest assured we are actually working very, very closely with many of our solar energy companies, because the Minister is absolutely correct. There are a lot of PMET opportunities available. And I must say, since we are putting a lot of time, energies, resources, not just for this year, but for many years to come, I think this is one area where the future jobs and the future skills and training will be required. Yeah, maybe Jen,
Yeah, I think as we speak now, I've got about maybe 100 employees now, but a lot of them, interestingly, are fresh grads that we have just hired from NUS, NTU, and even Ngee Poly. Every quarter, we have about 20 to 30 interns attached to us. And the interesting thing is, personally, I came from the semicon industry. Semicon in the 1980s, we used to carry the cassettes to move from one equipment to another. Maybe those in my era can understand that, we have many operators. We were talking about, foreign labor and because we need the people to be manual to come in to load the cassettes. In the year 2000, Semicon no longer have cassettes loading. Everything was automated with the automated vehicle. Use algorithm to lock down which step it goes. And I'm seeing that in the solar industry. Now we are very laborious. We need to carry heavy stuff, but we really need the young ones like yourself to come and give ideas. In fact, I'm working as we speak with ITE and Singapore Poly to have students engage together with us to work on how do we automate and improve the construction of these solar projects. More importantly, is about, just now there's a question on what's the lifespan of solar panels. It's about how to improve, optimize through digitalization to bring this green energy in the most optimized way. And to Minister's point, absolutely correct. How do we then bring this knowledge, know-how, and bring it to the region in our expert view, and this, I think, wealth of knowledge is very critical for Singapore.
Two things in what Jen said, which I just want to use to reinforce. One is, Jen comes from a semicon background. She's now in solar. And that's exactly the kind of point, the pivot. Actually, the skill sets in semicon manufacturing, many of them are very relevant for solar panel manufacturing as well, or solar cell manufacturing. Maybe not to the same level of clean room requirements, but still a lot of the principles. And therefore, as Jen says, the way the industry is going to evolve is probably going to track what happened in semicon. So people who are already in semicon industry, so it's not just for the fresh entrants into the job market, but those who are already involved in some of these areas, this is actually a very exciting new space that we can consider. The other thing is, we shouldn't think of solar as therefore only solar. Actually, solar is part of a larger energy solution that you can provide. So if you go in and you say, okay, I'm a solar energy solution provider, that's one possibility, but it's quite a narrow possibility. But you can actually go in and say, I'm part of a total energy solution for you. And solar is one aspect of it. Then you bring in system integration, managing, so all the software and the smarts that goes into managing how your energy is energy consumption is managed in a building, etc. All of this comes in, which means people with ICT background, people with some of the other building maintenance and all kind of experience. All of these things become relevant. So my point is, there are many new possibilities in this space created by the evolution of new alternative energy and specifically solar.
Chester, any other?
Great. Since we're on the topic of the jobs in PMT, so there's another very relevant. So what are the other jobs besides like engineering that's relevant to solar energy, as well as what are the skill sets for you to work well in the solar industry?
The other relevant is of course business development. We need to go and get business. We need lawyers, because we need to talk contracts, and the contracts can last for a very long time. We need commercial people who talk about project financing, providing funds, green financing, bonds, and all that. We need quality assurers, people who assure the quality, engineers, of course, maintenance. Digital people from the IT sector is very important, because we're dealing with lots of data for half hourly, the data from the sun, how is the sun behaving, meteorological understanding, because as we speak, global warming, the sun doesn't behave the same way as 20 years ago. We need to understand how the sun is moving and all that. So I would say it's a full spectrum of skills that you need. Personally, I'm from economics and statistics, so you still can go into solar. I'm from NUS Arts and Social Sciences, so Arts and Social Sciences students, you can go into solar as well.
Yeah, so it's a quite interesting spectrum for young people. But earlier on, talking about the data and the science behind solar is quite interesting. Especially these days, we all know the weather has been severely unpredictable. Yeah, here you have a scorching sun. Within the next hour or so, you get heavy rain. And well, what's the general sense on solar so far? The experience has the clouds affected, or how do we harness it thus far?
Yeah, in Singapore, I have to say, Singapore Power and EMA has done a very, very good job. The grid is very stable. So for the little solar that we have in the grid, does not really impact because we have got a very stable grid. Of course, as we grow solar, this no longer can be taken for granted. So we need specialists in this area to understand how to curb and control the intermittency.
Yes.
I think there's no other way than to really focus on how to use the energy elsewhere or how to pump in the energy. And I think that alludes to storage, right?
Yeah.
I think we really need to look into storage at some point to curb this intermittency.
You see, I think, Patrick, the point that Jen makes about grid stability, you see, because we have a very stable and reliable grid, because EMA and government and of course Power as a company doing it, they've invested a lot in this. But the basic model is very simple, right? The electricity is generated in one area, and then it is pumped through the system. I mean, putting it in very simple terms, right? And then the rest of the area is consuming it. And the electricity, because of the way it is being generated using turbines, gas turbines, is very stable. And you just manage it. Now, when you introduce something like solar, what happens is when the sun shines, you got more. When the sun is not there or cloud cover, it's like, that's what they mean by intermittency, right? You got this problem. And then, of course, at night, you got no solar. So it basically means the supply is going to be a bit more volatile. If that volatility is a very small part of the overall system, if it's a few percent, it's easy to wear because grids can handle that. But the moment your volatility becomes, when it becomes too big a part of the system, then you got to start planning for it. So that's one of the challenges. The other one is, actually, we are talking about electric vehicles. So that's also going to be a big factor, you see, because, the proposal is for 60,000 charging points all over the island, I think, by the end of the decade. Now, you think about it, right? Because today we work on a certain basis, and yes, everybody's house and all takes electricity. But once you have cars being charged in different locations, the consumption pattern also changes. And again, you need to look at how to manage that. So there are significant knock-on effects on the system as a whole. But again, these are also very exciting new possibilities, you see, because you now need people who are going to develop the charging infrastructure and a business model for the charging infrastructure for electric vehicles. This is, again, I'm sure companies like Samcorp are looking at. You also need people who are looking at the technology for grid stability, making sure it is being done properly and so on. So my own sense is this is a completely open area. And, I found it interesting that Jen said she's an arts and social science economics. So am I, from an economics background. We are all very versatile. I think all of us, regardless of background, I think what it should tell us is actually it's not so much about how deep. I mean, of course, you do need people who got very deep technical knowledge to do the technical work. But a lot of the work, you can do it not with that level of depth, but you still need to dedicate some time and effort to learn. Because if you don't know the basics, it's very hard to do, but it doesn't mean you have to go and do the hardcore engineering.
So, but thanks for that point of sharing from Jen and Minister about the grid supporting the bulk or the majority of the system. I think that's important because as consumers like you and me out there, and many of our residents tuning in, you get worried, because now that we have solar panels on our rooftop, what if the day is inclement weather or rainy weather? It doesn't mean that there's no more electricity supply to our blocks.
That's right.
It's no. So not to worry because I tried. I have one of these portable solar, night lights out in the open. And for that day there was no sun, there was a lot of clouds, and at night I had no lights. But
actually, most of the time, Pat, I think this is what Jen was also driving at. So you see, that's why you need it as a energy solution. If I come in and offer you solar, but I also offer you something that will, it's not just solar. I must offer you steady energy supply, you see. Because semiconductor plant cannot say that when the sun or the cloud blocks the sun, I don't have electricity, right? So you need that stability. So it comes with battery storage plus the grid source plus the solar all coming together.
So for all those residents out there living in our constituencies in the western part of Singapore, not to worry. We have the grid to support the supply, but again, it goes a long way to to complement and then supplement as well at the same time.
Great. Okay, the next question I guess is a little bit more on national level. So first is from a long-term perspective, first is what areas of renewable energy is Singapore looking into investing at? And specifically, how can solar energy contribute more to this island nation? Yeah.
Well, I mean, we touched on it a bit. I mean, since you say national, I think that's my cue, so I'll discuss something and then we'll see how. But basically, first of all, as we discussed earlier, we start on the basis that we are an alternative energy disadvantaged nation because we're an island state. The tradition, for example, what are the alternative energy sources that you can think about? Solar, yes. Wind, difficult for us. Geothermal, using the volcanic effects and so on, we can't. We don't want to if we can help it because we don't want geothermal activity around us too much. Then what else is left? There's some people are working on things like hydrogen, which is a possibility, hydrogen solutions going forward, but that's still a bit away, maybe a decade and a half, I don't know. And then there's also some nuclear solutions, but nuclear becomes more challenging because of all the implications for safety. But there's now work being done on much more modular, smaller things. So there's a whole spectrum of possibilities apart from what we already have. But I think the way we are approaching it at the national level is the first and most important thing is let's be energy efficient. In other words, we all know we must have energy, we need energy, but let's try and make it as efficient as possible, both in the generation, but also in the usage, right? If we use in a responsible way and we keep it efficient and we generate in a manner that doesn't incur too big a carbon footprint, that's already a big start. Then it's looking at alternatives. And the main alternatives we have today is solar, which is why we are putting a lot of effort into, as Patrick put it, the solarization of Singapore in many ways. But, it has its limits. But what I would say is actually, I'm quite optimistic that even more opportunities will come our way in future for energy solutions because there's a lot of research being done now because of climate change and money being put in order to generate realistic alternatives. And I think over the next decade and a half, 2 decades, we're going to see a lot of interesting possibilities. That's why we're investing quite big in the R&D as well for energy.
Actually, interestingly, there's geothermal energy in Singapore. You know where? It's Sembawang Hot Springs. So I was just chatting with some of our parliamentary colleagues.
Yes.
This possibility, and I know because I used to be advisor to one of the Eastern GRC, and we are all vehemently against it because it's a fantastic hot spring.
Yeah, exactly.
Foreigners and our residents in the northern part of Singapore are enjoying it.
It's exactly. So first of all, it's a nice hot spring. You don't want to kachau it if you can help it. The second thing is, even if we use it, I think it may generate some electric bikes, but it's not going to be useful for a lot of things. It's not of sufficient scale proposition. You see, that's the trouble.
Yeah, just
okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for the answers. Next, I guess it's an industry-specific question. What are some of the key challenges that the solar industry actually face in Singapore at this stage?
Solar is very nascent at this stage. A lot of people do not understand the mechanics of it, the benefits of it. So the construction can be a constraint. For example, some of you living in the West Coast or Pioneer GRC have seen our big cranes coming to lift up the panels. The construction of solar is not intrusive. We don't drill or we don't, it's not like a big construction of a building, right? The solar is just placed on the on the building. It goes through a lot of detailed calculations by the licensed electrical worker, the qualified professionals that signs off the structural loading and all that. So there is a lot of engineering behind. It's safe for people. There's no machinery parts. That's why it can last so long for the next. I mean, it just absorbs the sunlight over the next 25 years. So I think a lot of people do not know the details of how a solar plant is being constructed. So they tend to get worried because they see these big cranes coming. In SEMCORP, we are trying to build a video to see the life of a construction of a project. Maybe we'll show that, we'll stream it live on your Facebook when it's ready. So people know exactly how the solar is being constructed. They will feel safer and more at ease. It's like I said, it's still very nascent. Back in 2012, 2013, 2014, you have to be really, really an environment enthusiast to adopt solar because it's just so expensive. But the prices have come down so much that now solar is cheaper than drawing power from the grid during that time that we can absorb the sun. So it's no longer commercially unviable. So you can, if you have the space, you should really go all out to do solar because it's cheaper.
Yeah, in fact, 2 weeks ago, as a run up to today's session, I went up to the rooftop of one of the blocks in Pioneer to have a look at the panels. So Jen is actually correct. It's not intrusive. Very nice panels that we have, and nicely constructed with walking space, and it's not as heavy loading as you can see. It's a lot of technology. Very thin. If you want to have a better picture of it, you can follow. Go to my community page. I posted it on my Facebook.
Pat, you look like you're sitting on a solar panel right now.
Yes. We're trying to levitate where possible. And something like this. Over here we have a green screen, but on your screen it's a solar panel. So it's something like this. Nicely laid out in our rooftops. So actually, Jen brought a very good point. You may realize that how come in the West Coast GRC as well as Pioneer SNC, why aren't you all doing it even faster, get everyone 100%? So we're actually doing it in a phasal manner. We are quite good. I think in the West Coast GRC bits, we are about more than 75% or so, because we're actually rolling it out in conjunction with many of our ongoing estate upgrading works. For example, like your home improvement programs, as well as changing of water tanks, as well as some of the R&R works in our estates. So in case you're wondering why they aren't coming to you yet for some of the blocks, it's because we're going to time it. And Jen brought a very, very important point, the acceptance level of the entire ecosystem. So everyone plays a part, when we roll out and we construct all these across the estate. We need your support, our residents out there. Because say all you want, we still need to bring the panels up to the roof. We still need to install some of these devices. So bear with us as we gradually roll it out. But I think all the players from HDB, Town Council, our estate, our community partners, and all of you residents tuning in, we all play a very important role, because the entire ecosystem will once well-oiled and synergized, will ensure we are solarized as soon as we can. I think we have still a minute or so to our Q&A, and any last words from the team? Maybe we'll start with Chester. Any last words as a youth and new leader, as well as a community leader, and being part of our western part of Singapore?
Sure. I would say that solar energy is definitely, I think, sustainability as a whole, I guess. Like, it's not just about solar energy, right? It's also about reducing consumptions, reducing waste, recycling, so on and so forth. So as a whole, I would say that this is in the hearts and minds of most young people nowadays. And even my team right now, they're actually running some upcycling terrarium workshops. They're running bring your own container campaign, so on and so forth. So yeah, definitely it speaks a lot, and it's very heartening for everyone to see all these efforts coming together. It's little steps, but eventually we'll get there.
Yeah, so all the youth out there, you heard what Chester mentioned. Across the whole of the western part of Singapore, we have many initiatives by our youth network, particularly in this greening sustainability agenda. So join us for our programs activities. Jen, any last words for all of us?
I have to say, sustainability is our business, our responsibility. Join me and let's do it together.
Minister, any last words for before we?
As long as the sun shines, you'll have solar energy. So the industry will be there for a long time. And I think, this is really a golden moment, golden age for solar. So lots of opportunities. And as I said, not just about solar, but the whole effort around sustainability and environment and how we can mitigate the effects of climate change. So it's an area that's got a lot of possibilities, and I encourage everyone to look at it seriously as something where they can also dedicate their lives to, in terms of either as a career or contributing from a voluntary and other perspectives.
So thanks, Minister, for joining us. Thanks, Chester. Thanks, Jen. For being part of today's Facebook Live, or should I say Connect Pioneer, on this very, very important green agenda. Yeah, today's series, of course, it's not just today's series, but we're doing this Connect Pioneer on a monthly basis on various important topics, table topics that are close to many of our hearts and minds. And in particular, I'd like to thank the community volunteer team who is behind the camera, empowering this. We are very thankful for the entire team who has been hard at work behind the scenes and making today's Facebook Live on our Pioneer community page possible. And again, we're going to flash out a QR code. Yes, this is a survey form. If you can, use your phone devices, scan the QR code, give us your feedback and suggestions as we prepare for some of these Connect Pioneer sessions and some of the topics for the rest of this year, as well as in the coming years ahead. And continue to like and follow us on our Pioneer Community Facebook page. Not just that, our Insta, as well as our Pioneer Telegram, Pioneer Community Telegram. So do follow us as we roll out many of these useful information contemporaneously and to you by the second, by the minute, by the day, so that you know what's happening in and around the neighborhood. And on that note, big thank you to all of you who are tuning in, and of course early on, thank you, Minister Iswaran, for joining us, spending the last hour with us. Chester, our Youth Network Community Leader, as well as Jen from Sandcorp, and myself, Patrick Day, advisor from Pioneer Constituency, saying, have a great afternoon and the rest of the weekend to all our residents tuning in. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, sir.